got another topic here. This one is another one that you wanted to have. You wanted to have some words about that, and that's about a movie that's coming up called Top Gun Maverick. I see the look on your face, T. I see the look on your face, man. And I was, it's like, okay, I'm not a. I can say this, like when the first Top Gun came out, right? I honestly wasn't a huge fan of the movie, and I can still remember, like, there was a I don't know where it was, a hanging out with some friends or something. We had an opportunity to go to see Top Gun. Say, hey, let's go check out Top Gun. And I was a teenager at the time, and I think I went and saw like Short Circuit. I think Short Circuit was out that same week. Yeah, Short Circuit. So that's where my head was at the time. So, but as time went on, grew up a little bit, watched the original Top Gun, great movie, lots of fun, music soundtrack is great, all of that. But you don't think that this Top Gun is going to be any special, right? So here's a little article real quick. This came out earlier this year. Top Gun Maverick trailer cast, everything you need to know, and it kind of goes into some information about Top Gun. We know that it's hitting the big screen May 27 of 2022. Hopefully there's no delays for that, because a lot of people have been waiting. This movie should have came back in 2020. But obviously things have been going on in the country that it couldn't. So now that's where we're at. Top Gun is ready to launch, but you think that this movie is going to bomb. Now, I need some explanations, T. You got to explain it to me like I'm a 3-year-old. Why do you think this movie is going to bomb?
Because this movie is almost 40 years too late. This movie is not necessary. I see a Wall Street 2. I see a box office flop. I see a Basic Instinct 2. This is not going to do well. The only way this can perform well is if, the issues that are happening over on the left side of the world are, what the generation that's into this. I don't see kids want to grow up saying, I want to be a fighter pilot. It's just not going to transition well. It doesn't. The irony of this is not there. You don't have conflict, even though you're trying to redo the 80s with what's going on on the left side of the world. It just is not. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean? It's
interesting.
It's not. It doesn't have the legs it needs that it had. Although the circumstances around this are almost eerily similar to the 80s, but it's just not going to work. You'd have to have something transition between now and then for it to take occurrence. Otherwise, people aren't checking for this movie. This is not a must-have. You know what I mean? And when you got a great actor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just step in real quick, just so I make sure I understand. So you think the current climate, right? Like what's going on in the world right now? We got a country going up against another country, Russia, Ukraine. We got all of that action going on right now, and you don't think that that's going to kind of get people into the Top Gun spirit of things? I'm not sure what the movie is going to be about. I'm not sure if there's a lot of political agendas in this thing or not. I don't know if there's even patriotism. There was a lot of the feeling of patriotism from that first Top Gun. You don't think that's a part of this?
You remember the movie Stealth with Jamie Foxx?
Yeah.
Did that do well?
I don't remember how it did. Honestly, I don't remember.
You're not this. You can't have a macho movie. This is a macho movie about. I'm macho. You don't have that. You don't have that anymore. That's not our culture anymore. We've moved on, and this is not something that will transition well. He'd be better off if he was going against aliens. Yeah, great. But what are we doing here? You know what I mean? You got bureaucracy here that pushes buttons now. Not, hey, let's go get a fighter pilot to do it. You got drones. Like, what is this about? Like, why is this necessary? You know what I mean?
Got you.
I could see if you would say, hey, this is life on a base. You know what I mean? And he was in charge. He's still a fighter pilot. Like, what kind of things have happened in the last 35 years that make this movie necessary? It's an unnecessary movie.
I definitely think you're right about the unnecessary piece of it. It's playing on nostalgia. We know how it is nowadays. We're going to get into that in a little bit later on in the show about how things get remade, rebooted for the purposes of nostalgia. But it's Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is still a pretty solid star in today's movie going public. A lot of people remember this movie. So you're going to get I think you're going to get a much older demographic. You know what I'm saying? I think you're going to get people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and up. Because, like I said, when I was a kid, you know, like kids was excited about seeing Top Gun. I mean, this is like 1986, so I'm like a 13-year-old kid.
You had the games, the fighter pilot games. You
Yeah,
had the still coming out. You had a lot of things going on. Like I said, you had the '80s bravado.
it
Another
was a different time.
key factor that I've been waiting to tell you about is my surprise underestimation. You don't have pop rock going on right now. You had a lot of rock and roll going on in the '80s with bands that were, big hair, big bands.
Hmm.
You had Bon Jovi, you had all those things. What are you gonna
Yeah.
bring back?
Yeah,
All
the
the
80s, the 80s is not the same. It's not the same, right? Like the 80s it was a completely different time. And even though they're redoing a lot of things, like you said, from the 80s, this isn't the 80s, and the
no
temperature of the country is completely different. So where Top Gun thrived, it was in that kind of
temperature
Reagan
of the world.
conservative 80s
The
time
world.
frame.
The temperature of the world is different. Now
Yeah.
I could see he was delivering. Hey man, they're delivering aid or doing something. I haven't seen the movie. One thing I'm pretty positive about. There's been a bunch of probably rewrites on this
Hmm.
and like reshoots. It probably will be a melting pot of what was a bunch of good scripts that they had to jumble together and make the best of. Because this movie's had several delays. I just don't think it's going to mix well. It's not going to transition well like they think. And
I
they've got a bad movie. They pushed this movie back this many times. They got a bad movie.
I think you've convinced me, T, because I was kind of on the fence when you said you wanted to talk about this. I was like, I don't know. I think Top Gun's going to, but I think you've convinced me just from the standpoint of me remembering what it was like as a kid coming up in the 80s and remembering how the original Top Gun played out. But I could be wrong. You might be wrong. We'll see about it. It drops May 27. And folks, tell me what you think. Do you think Top Gun Maverick, the rebirth, Tom Cruise, all of that, you think this is going to be a smash success? Chill out, T. Chill out, man. You all right, man? You think this is going to be a smash success? Do you think this is going to be a box office flop? Or somewhere in between? It's just kind of like hey, it's good, but it's nothing great. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and we'll check that out. All right, T.